Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ellen. So I often get asked by people, why do I mix my greens instead of taking greens from a tube? Because it's just not natural looking when you take it from a tube. I will show you in this demonstration why it's important to mix your greens, and I mix my greens all the time because it looks more natural, like natural foliage you would see out in nature. If you're taking like a viridian green hue or cadmium green deep, even though any of those colors from the tube, there's nothing in nature that looks like those colors, nothing whatsoever. So I always mix my greens, and I use a staple of a certain kind of blues. I use mostly peacock blue and Prussian blue, but I also add in ultramarine blue and cobalt blue. And when you mix them with cadmium yellow deep, you come up with a whole variety of greens. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I mix them and why I mix them, and even add a little bonus mixing as well with the greens. And then for Patreon members, I have a super bonus mixing at the end. So if you're a Patreon member, check out your Patreon tutorial on the Patreon site. I have the bonus there for you. But for everyone else, this is going to be a great mixing tutorial to show you how I mix my greens. And of course, it's most important to mix your greens on the exact paper you're going to use. It doesn't make any sense to mix your greens on crappy paper that you're not going to use, because you're not going to have the same kind of result on that paper you'll have on the paper you're going to paint on. So when you're starting out, definitely need to mix your colors and mix them on the paper you're going to paint on, because it makes no sense to do it the other way. And if you have any questions, please leave in the comment section. You know, this is a fun exercise. It really helps you if you're a beginner to learn how to mix the colors. And it just, teaches you why you have to do the mixing of the greens. It just doesn't seem natural in nature. And if you want to check out the Patreon, there's a link in my description box for Patreon. I have ad-free videos, extra tutorials that are not on YouTube that are more advanced, and I have more like reference photos and traceables there. I also have like a Facebook Facebook page, not a channel. And the patrons get first dibs on my watercolor workshops and retreats. So it's just a little added bonus for the Patreon members. And just check it out. It's just a place people go and support me, which I appreciate so much. So let's get to our mixing tutorial of all the greens and why I do it. Okay, so let me go over the supplies that I'll be using for this little tutorial. I'm using like an older, worn down, number 8 long round Princeton Velvet Touch Series brush. You don't want to mix your colors, for like if they're being activated or whatever, and like a nice new brush. You really want to mix it if you're really kind of doing that, and an older brush. I mix my paints often with some brushes. I go through the Princeton brushes often because they're not that expensive. They're like around $10. If it was a real expensive brush, I would definitely use a crappier brush like this, and then go in and use my really nice brush. I'm using Arches 100% cotton cold pressed paper because I always feel like it's important to use the paper you're going to paint on to do any kind of color swatching, because then you actually know the true color of the paint that you're going to use when you're swatching. Otherwise, it's doesn't make any sense. And then I just have some paper towels and water here. So I'm going to start with the blues that I use and the yellow that I use. I always use cadmium yellow deep. It's like the basic yellow. It's perfect for anything. You can make many colors with just cadmium yellow deep, quinachradone magenta, and Prussian blue. I always say those 3 colors alone if you're starting out. I can grab those. There we go. We have quinachradone magenta and my Prussian blues. This one, I have more than this, but this is those 3. You can make all the colors you ever need with this. You theoretically can make black, but I always say grab a Payne's gray, and then you can theoretically make brown, but I like to have a brown, so I have burnt umber. But those 3 colors you can make all kinds of colors with. And I will talk about that in the bonus part with the Patreon. So right now for this tutorial though, we're going to go over greens. So I have my cadmium yellow deep, right? So I will put that color over here just to show you that, right? And I'll loosen that up. And I'm going to use a very well-known color that you see in all the brands, which is ultramarine blue. We'll start off with those. So we have ultramarine blue and cadmium yellow deep. Now, here we are on the palette. Let's mix them together. And what do we have? It's kind of like a mossy, olivey kind of green. Nothing very bright. And the reason for that mostly is because ultramarine blue kind of has a little red tinge to it. And that's like the mossy green. And you know, I always talk about on my videos, butter, cream, milk, coffee, tea, it's the consistency of the paint. So right now it's creamy, like cream, right? If I add more water to it, it turns into milk, more water, coffee, more water, tea. So there's that nice green color. Obviously, if you're watering it down, like, and when you water it down for tea, it's so much water, you don't want it all in your brush. You gotta have to tap it on paper towel, and then you get that light, pretty. So this would be a really pretty green if you're using it for, you know, some kind of beautiful kind of painting. And the reason why I mix my greens, I've talked about this many times, it just makes sense because it's more like nature. When you're mixing greens and are not like nature, it's kind of weird. So here we go back. I'm actually going to put yellow on each one of these little squares here. Yellow here, yellow here, yellow here. So now we're going to try cobalt. Cobalt is similar to ultramarine blue. Put that color right here. Just a lot brighter though. So what will we get when we combine cobalt with yellow? A brighter kind of mossy green, right? A little bit brighter. Here's a creamy color green. A little more brighter, right? This color is brighter. So you're going to get a brighter green. And I'll water that down. So light tea consistency, light color, and see what it looks like. Very pretty. Now, one of my favorites of all time, like I just talked about, clean up my palette here, is the Prussian blue. It's a deep blue, right? You can see that right here. Prussian blue. Look at that. Very deep. So what do you think when you're going to get when you mix the two? Take the cadmium yellow deep, mix in the Prussian blue. You get a deep green, but it's a bright green. It's not dull, but I'm going to grab a little more Prussian blue. So here we go. Deep green. It's a bluish green. And if you water it down, add a lot more water, make it like tea. A light, oops. It's so pretty when it's light, right? See? Very light, pretty green. The last one here, the cadmium yellow deep, is one of my ultimate favorites also, which is the peacock blue. It's a very bright turquoisey blue. So, what do we get when we have that? Take this off. So here's the peacock blue. Now, not all brands make peacock blue. Holbein does. Something similar would be turquoise. And you mix that with yellow, and you've got a really bright green. Like that. Water that down. And you get a nice pretty light green. Now, depending on how much yellow and how much blue you have, changes the color green also. If I take more yellow than I have blue, in the peacock blue, I'm going to get a really bright chartreusey like green. So when you see me talk about this many times in my videos, there is that bright chartreuse color because it has more yellow to it. Even more yellow, even brighter. Fantastic, right? So the opposite, even more blue. That's going to get deeper green, even more blue, even more deeper green. You see how we're going with this? That, and then you water that green down, right? The tea consistency is that pretty light green. You water all these down like this, you get this really light pale chartreuse. pale, and then that green, pale. Just look at the variety just with that peacock blue of all these greens, depending on how much yellow you added or how much blue you added. Right there. These are bright colored greens that would be great for summer colors in the summertime, etc., etc. Now, even though the Prussian blue is fairly dark, here we go with the yellow and just a touch of the Prussian blue. We have a bright, bright green. Right? If we add a little more yellow, it's almost like a chartreuse, right? Water this down. Even more water. Really get that wet, like TT. Similar to this, right? This one's a little bit darker. They're kind of similar. And then you add more Prussian blue, so yellow. Obviously we have that deep green. More blue. We have deeper green. Really deep green. You see that? And even more blue. Almost like blue itself. Water these down. And what do you have? Pale blue, turquoise almost, right? Water these down. What do you have? See? Out of that green. Water that down. And what do you have? It's a little more yellow in that one. This is why I say the Prussian blue alone with the yellow creates such a variety of greens. And when you add something like a magenta to it, right? I have a little magenta here. Then you've changed it again. Now you've got this gray green. See? You can see that gray. Add a little more magenta with the yellow. And you have even like a funky olivey green. Just look at the variety of just one color. Blue, yellow, and the magenta. Fantastic, right? Look at all those greens you get. Just imagine the foliage you could create, which is that I'm like making a mess here on my palette. With the cobalt, let's go back with that one. And the yellow, we can add way more yellow. See, it gets a little brighter. Water that down. Have a nice light color. Even more yellow with the cobalt. Even brighter. You see where I'm going with this? They're kind of similar, right? And you're like, why would I even bother doing that? Now add more cobalt. And you got this bluish green. Here's the light color of that. Very pretty. Even more cobalt. Nice blue, blue green. That's a pretty color. Be really good for eucalyptus. Look how pretty that is. It's a blue, perfect eucalyptus color. Now, like I talked about before, take a little magenta to that. What do you've got? You've got like a gray green. All right, add a little magenta. That's gray. Look at, that's the variety. Add a little more yellow. Back into that. Look at that. It's like an olivey green. Go back and add more cobalt. Now that you got the yellow in there. And again, this other deep grayish green, because it has some magenta in there. The variety is insane that you can create. And since cobalt is similar to ultramarine blue, again, I'm going to clean this up. So now we've got yellow with a touch ultramarine blue. Touch. A little too much touch. Okay, just a tap. Still kind of yellow. I want to add a little bit more. Okay. So we got kind of like a chartreusey color. Just more on the olivey side. Add my water. Light yellowish. Now we're going to add more blue. Right? Changes even more so. I'm always trying to show you the light end of it to see. Obviously in the middle will be different, but add a little more blue. We're getting like that deeper color. Look at that. Add a little more blue. Even more so. Light color. Oops. Simple. And add more blue. Well, look at that. Is it even green anymore? Kind of. Not for blue though. So we've got that yellow in there. Put some more yellow back. Now let's add, I know we're talking about greens, but I wanted to just throw that magenta in there. Touch of magenta. What do you think you have? Look at that green. A little more magenta. Almost like a brown. Oop, pigment cut really. Right? Go back and add more blue. Yellow. Touch of magenta. And look at that. It's almost like you have Payne's gray. Just check that out. That alone. The variety of greens. Who do you think has the most variety? I would choose, if you only could choose one color, I would always say the Prussian blue. Because the more yellow, I didn't even get so chartreusey, but it's a little bright yellow here. But you grab this yellow and just a tap of that Prussian blue, you get a bright Kelly green, right? Here's that bright Kelly green. You add some more yellow to that. It gets even lighter. A nice bright yellow green. Add more yellow. And you have that chartreuse color. That's similar to the peacock. Right? You add more blue. And you get the deep. So you get more variety. You can't get a deeper color with that peacock. It's never going to happen. But you can with the Prussian blue. You see how dark that gets? These guys are never going to get that dark. This is the cobalt. It's probably like the darkest in here. And ultramarine blue, pretty much the darkest. Well, almost close to it. So Prussian blue, right here, hands down, is your best bet. Now, things would change if you added a different yellow, since I always use just cadmium yellow deep. But I do have this other yellow. I have a amidalazone lemon, just like lemon yellow. And see how this changes when you add a different yellow. Cadmium yellow is like the yellow. I've got this little bright lemony yellow. Obviously, this is going to really change. So there's a lemony yellow. I already have a dirty brush, so I'm going to clean that so you can see better. And my palette. And get a clean paper towel. Now this wouldn't be a color that I would pick out, but it's similar to like a lemon yellow, so that's a very lemony color. Now you add that Prussian blue. Look at that. Kind of funky, huh? It doesn't seem natural, does it? It's very bright, but that's not a natural color you would see in nature. It's kind of fake. I wouldn't see a leaf that bright color. I would see leaves and greens and this color. So this is why I don't grab that color. So maybe people have that and they love it and it's bright. If you want that intensity. And if I add more blue, it's still going to have this funky kind of bluish green color. That's really not a natural color. So you have to compensate for that by adding maybe magenta. So I'm add some magenta in here. Go back and add the yellow. Add a little magenta. And then you might have a more natural looking green. That red is going to dull it down and make it look a little more natural. And so it's important to mix your greens to make it look like nature. Otherwise you have this weird fake color, right? If I took a color from the tube, I do have a green in here. This is a cadmium green deep. I have a viridian green hue. And I have an olive green. But you see, I never use them. I don't know, I think I bought them on a whim to play with them. And out of the tube, it just looks fake. So here's the cadmium green deep. And you'll see, I'll zoom in a little bit. I'll put the color over here. Again, not natural. Would you see that in nature? No, absolutely not. Right? Looks fake. If you want to use it for abstracts, perfect. Viridian green. Another one that's going to look definitely not like natural nature. Even brighter. Even more intense than that. Not natural. And the olive green. Again, another one. Great for decorative, not natural. See? Really just not. So this is why you will not see me in my videos use green from the tube. And then people get frustrated about mixing, but you have to just keep practicing. So put your colors here and then take one color like the Prussian blue and go down adding the yellow, and then you practice with that one green adding in some other colors, maybe the magenta or a rose or even an orange, and then you'll get even more variety. But I say just these two guys alone can make all these greens. I added some reds down here, and this one is the winner, Prussian blue, for everything, in my opinion. Ultramarine blue is good, great, and cobalt's great for even more duller greens. If you want vibrant greens, Prussian blue and peacock blue are my favorites. So I hope this mixing was very helpful. It's important to do that, and of course write down what you used, right? Even if you have to write down this, like I mixed like a tap of the yellow, half and half, 3/4, you know, do that kind of scenario if you don't remember what your greens are. I've been painting greens for so long that I know that I'm just going to mix this particular blue and this particular yellow, or even sometimes you're just playing with it and see how far I can go with the color. But this is the most important lesson in how to paint your greens, because mixing greens is the most important thing you can do when you're painting foliage. You don't want some random viridian green. You want some normal looking greens. The Prussian blue and the yellow every time. Cadmium yellow deep. Make some nice, see I'm just twisting, turning, nice greens. For a tree. Just looks more natural and more like nature. So, hope that was helpful. And if you're a Patreon member, you can see the bonus round. Take care, and thank you so much for stopping by my channel. And just practice, practice, practice. It's really going to help you playing with the color. And I always suggest to practice on a sheet of the paper that you're going to use to paint on. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time painting some random paper. You're not going to really get the true value of the color and how it's supposed to look. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope you have a great day. And thank you so much for stopping by. If you haven't hit the bell notification button, please do so you know my tutorials are up. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.